The NBA playoffs continue to push on, and it's a lot to look at and a lot of things that Bulls front office head man Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley should be looking around. Arturas, look around. Change must happen. Y'all know we gonna talk about it, break it down on where our Chicago Bulls need to be doing. But you gotta hear the music first.
Cognac, gang.
Shy Boys Podcast with the Cognac Boys. I'm Cognac Boy Bobby, and I'm holding it down on today's daily episode. If you tuned in with me today, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell as well. Now, we talk about the NBA playoffs. A lot of things to look at, a lot of things to want for our Chicago Bulls. So change needs to happen. Do I think there's going to be a lot of change that happens? I don't believe that. But it can possibly happen. If we're going off based off the history of what we've seen from the Bulls front office, we've seen that they can absolutely get some players up in here and kind of construct the team, or at least attempt to. That one offseason that I'm referring to is when we got Alonzo Ball, when we got a Alex Caruso with DeMar DeRozan to pair on this team and hope that the Chicago Bulls could be a playoff contender team and hopefully continue to elevate themselves to be a championship contender. But that plan did not end well. That plan got sidetracked in a way. Lonzo Ball went down with injury. Zach LaVine has dealt with his injuries. Patrick Williams has not flourished or stepped up to the level that most of us wanted him to step up. But we did see some positives out of that. We got a better player in Ayo Dosunmu. We got a better player in Kobe White. That was a decline with Nikola Vucevic. So there were some things that you like and some things that you didn't like. But overall, if Arturas Karnisovas is looking around, you need to be understanding that change needs to come for your Chicago Bulls. Now, if we're looking at the playoffs and just the playoffs, I know it's not a huge sample size, but I believe that if you're looking at the playoffs, you got to be able to take something from it. And if you're looking at the playoffs from the viewpoint of Arturas Karnisovas and understanding that change must happen, you got to look at the young teams that are helping moving this game forward in teams like the Oklahoma City Thunder, in teams like the Minnesota Timberwolves, in teams like the Pacers, the OKC Thunder. They look like they got themselves a team that can run for years and years to come by going out and acquiring a young talented player with a lot of upside in SGA before they discovered that he can be an MVP candidate. You know what I'm saying? And then you look at the Minnesota Timberwolves, you see that they went out and took a few bites at the apple, got themselves a Jaden McDaniels, got themselves an Ant Edwards, an Alexander, and even went out and traded a ridiculous amount of picks for Rudy Gobert. And I was one of those guys like they were going to be a first-round exit, and that they was last year. But guess what? Their players took that step forward. Rudy Gobert came on and be able to help this team put out a ferocious defensive lineup on anybody that wants to play these guys within the playoffs. We looking at the Indiana Pacers. They went and got themselves Tyrese Halliburton. They added some additions to that, had some guys in Miles Turner already present, had themselves a young veteran who's a scrappy young guy, and TJ McConnell, who constantly gives the Chicago Bulls problems. So these young teams are moving the game forward with the way they play, with the youth that they have and the assets that they have in the bag, minus the Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, along with those teams that I just mentioned, you got to talk about the teams that built their success with the combination of going to get veteran players, but also drafting young players and allowing these young players to develop, to become superstars or stars, and then adding on to these respective teams to where these guys are in prime position to be in the playoffs for many, many years to come. The first team I got to bring up is the Boston Celtics. Went and got themselves a Jason Tatum. Went and got themselves a Jaylen Brown. You trade for a Drew Holiday. You pick up a solid veteran in Derek White. You get rid of Marcus Smart. You're able to acquire Kristaps Porzingis. So that organization has been drafting well and positioning themselves well enough to where they can acquire high-end players to help push this thing forward for what they are trying to do, which is compete for a championship. Another team, you talk about the Cavs. They went and got themselves Evan Mobley. They went and got themselves a Darius Garland. Then they started to add on other pieces to their team to help their team in a Max Strus, you know what I'm saying? And players like that, and just to kind of add on to it, a Karis LeVert, et cetera, et cetera. You're looking at the Knicks, when they got themselves Jalen Brunson, et cetera. We all know these teams, the Cavs, the Boston, you know what I'm saying, the Knicks. These are teams who did a combination of everything. And I think that right now, when we talk about the Chicago Bulls, they are in the okay spot. I'm not going to say in a great spot, but they are in a okay spot, because if we're talking about what they have already, you have some things that you can absolutely work with if you're the Chicago Bulls. Now, when we talk about the Chicago Bulls, you got to be able to construct this thing well. And I think youth plays a huge part in this. I know if we continue to look at the playoffs, we look at those old teams who had a lot of promise, or who could have been a team to make some noise in the playoffs. The first team up, it has to be the first team up, is the Los Angeles Lakers, a team with a bevy of talents. But when they went against the Denver Nuggets, they were able to, put up some nice leads against them, but they couldn't close the deal because your two best players, which are two old guys, or Anthony Davis is not so old when it comes to the NBA age, but his track record of injuries makes it, or gives off the perception that he's one of those older players. And what happened to them? They're bounced. The Suns, they tried to buy themselves into championship contention, and it didn't work out. They got swept. You're looking at a team that had some promise, maybe, you know what I'm saying? You're looking at one of those younger teams, but the construction of the team is just not all the way right with this team. That's the New Orleans Pelicans. They have gotten their ass sent home as well. So when the Chicago Bulls sit down, Arturas, look around. The teams that are still alive today, it's kind of like how you need to mimic your team so you can continue to push this thing forward. The Chicago Bulls did not win 40 games the last 2 seasons, y'all. They won 39 games this past season, and it just wasn't good enough. But the Bulls have things you can work with. You have a Kobe White. You have a Ayo Dosunmu. Those two guys seem like they're finding their way. And then hopefully with another offseason under their belt, additional coaching, additional training, additional workouts, it seems like these two guys can really be the driving force to help the Chicago Bulls push things forward. Now, let's be clear. The change is not going to happen overnight, but those are two good starting pieces. Now, when you talk about and you continue to go down the roster, you could still look at some of the additional pieces that are around the Chicago Bulls that might be a little bit promising. You still talk about a Patrick Williams. You know what I'm saying? You still have to look at Patrick Williams as if he can. I understand there's going to be some people that's off the bandwagon. I am 1 foot in, 1 foot out, because Patrick Williams is starting to appear in my mind as someone who's now becoming injury prone. He's had 2 seasons out of the 4 seasons that he's played to where it was season ending injuries. One time with the wrist, and then the recent injury this past season with the foot. So you still look at Patrick Williams as that. You look at the step forward, not a huge step forward, but a step forward in Dalen Terry's development. You look at that. You look at the fearlessness of a Julian Phillips. You look at maybe a small sample size of Orlop Bitim to see if you can move that forward. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how the Bulls perceive him. I don't know if they feel like he's in their future plans, but I feel like there were some things that you can work with because of how he played as well. His 3-point shooting ability, his touch up, he needed to touch up on the defensive end, but he wasn't all the way bad in every single game, even though he started to lose minutes as the season waned on, when the Bulls could have absolutely used him if he was playing some nice basketball. So you got some things that you can work with. Now, the things that you absolutely need to come to terms with is to figure this thing out to where the Bulls can be a better team in a modern NBA. Because first, there has not been a lot of investment within this front court. That's your 4 and your 5 spots for the Chicago Bulls. And right now, I think that there needs to be an emphasis on youth in those 2 positions, or at least depth within those 2 positions. When you talk about the Chicago Bulls this past season in pace, they ranked 28th. That's 2 above the bottom. It's only 30 teams in the NBA. Offensively, 19th in the NBA. Defensively, something we hung our hats on the previous season, not this past season, the season before that, we hung our hat on the defensive end, but this past season we was only 22nd. So the investment needs to come with trying to modernize the offense continuously so we can go ahead and ensure that this thing is not getting stuck in the mud. The bandwagon is not getting stuck in the mud. Because if we're going to come to the season and look at a Chicago Bulls team with only 39 wins, my ladies and gentlemen, I will take a 25, 26, 27 game win season just so I can sit down and be like, hey, at least we are finding young, talented players that can help propel this thing to new heights. That's how I'm looking at it. The Chicago Bulls, if you're Arturas Karnisovas and you're looking around, you need versatility. You need some versatility. But I believe some of it has already been done. Follow me. Follow me. When you talk about the guys that the Chicago Bulls have are young players. I don't really care about a Javon Carter, Torrey Craig. Don't care about them. I'll touch on them later. But when you talk about the versatility that's already present on the team, there is some. I'm talking about your Ayo Dosunmu, a lanky guy who plays the guard position, who can guard multiple positions. That's a win. You talk about Dalen Terry. If you can continue to string him on and help him compartmentalize that energy to where it's more controlled and bottled up in a way to where he knows when and how to use that energy, he could be effective. This is a guy that provides length as well for the guard / shooting small forward position because of his length and his defensive activity. You have young forwards in a Julian Phillips, in a Patrick Williams, who can play the 3 and the 4 positions. So you have something that's there, but the problem still lies in the front court with Nikola Vucevic. Look, I know it's going to sound crazy, y'all. I know it's going to sound crazy, but it's only 2 options on the table for me. For me. I don't know what your options are when it comes to how you handle Nikola Vucevic, and I don't care if this sounds crazy. The 2 options that I have on the table for Nikola Vucevic is to either 1, let his ass come off the bench, or 2, trade him. That's my train of thought. And the reason I'm starting to look at this is because I think that Nikola Vucevic has slowed down tremendously. He's never been a great defensive guy, but at least in the previous year in 2022, 2023, you've seen a better effort come out of Nikola Vucevic defensively. Last year, complete abysmal, complete old guy. He wasn't useful in many situations, at least in my opinion. Outside of watching the box score, we know he's going to give you double-doubles. But I feel like to find a defined role for Nikola Vucevic will be better for him and the Chicago Bulls if he stays on this team. Me personally, I'm looking at Nikola Vucevic as a guy who needs to be placed in the Al Horford type of role. We're going to give you some time. We're going to allow you to come in when we need you. When we need you, we're going to depend on you for your veteran leadership, your scoring ability, and hell, we'll see if we can get something out of you defensively. But guess what? That's going to come in spurts, not as the majority of the game. It's going to come to him in spurts. I think Nikola Vucevic will be better in spurts, and then you kind of go from there. Now, when we talk about the backup center position, the versatility that needs to be there is athleticism. I love Andre Drummond and what he can bring with the size that he could provide for the Chicago Bulls. With his rebounding ability, you can't knock that. But you need to have a lob threat within this game if you're going to continuously run pick and roll the way that you do, or continue to run some of these sets the way that you do. To bail DeMar DeRozan out, to have an outlet with a lob threat, I think those 2 things will be good. And then you add on something else to Patrick Williams to see where he can go and provide him with some depth to where he's not exhausted trying to guard Giannis Antetokounmpo when he goes up against him, not trying to guard Karl-Anthony Towns when he goes up against him. You can present yourself and place yourself within different ways if you add depth that is meaningful. Depth that makes sense. We have so many guards on this team, but not a lot of front court players. Where is the additional help? because we lost Patrick Williams. Now the Bulls had to scramble and try to figure it out. No more Javonte Green playing the 4. I don't want to see it anymore. I respect Javonte Green for what he was able to do. I don't want to see it anymore. That's just me. So the first order of business for Arturas Karnisovas is that, man, you need to have some versatility. The next thing is that you need to go out and acquire assets. I don't care if these assets result in getting draft picks. I don't care if this asset results in getting more young players who you believe have some upside. I'd rather take a few bites at the apple than to not go to the apple tree at all. That's just how I'm looking at it. So Arturas Karnisovas, look around. And your offseason should include getting a deal done with Zach LaVine. Get him out of here. Look, I respect Zach LaVine as the player, but right now, the Bulls are stuck in mud. Even if Zach was to return right now, let's get him out of here. Let's acquire some assets in the form of players or picks, and let's continue to build this thing out for the betterment of the organization so we can have a brighter future, because the light is very, very dim. And when you talk about a team that I didn't even bring up in the Orlando Magic in their youth, forcing a game 7. I'm saying they lost that game, but they were there. Bulls won 1 playoff game, and in 1 playoff series, they won 3. Look at it. The next thing, figure out a defined role for Nikola Vucevic. Figure it out. I gave you my options. Trade him or bench him. That's just how I'm looking at it. And I understand the benching might not come early, because if you go draft yourself a young big, it's going to be a time to bring him along and see how he fits in and see if he can be consistent, et cetera, et cetera. I understand that. But the eventual plan needs to be to either trade him or bench him. In the Lonzo Ball situation, I don't really like talking about this because y'all heard me 2 seasons ago. I'm not convinced he's coming back. I'm not a doctor. I don't know how he's progressing. Only he knows that. The Bulls staff knows that. But the Lonzo Ball situation needs to be pushed off to the side. If he comes back, okay, cool. We'll welcome him on with open arms. But as of right now, the Chicago Bulls need to move as if he's not coming back. That's how the Chicago Bulls need to be moving. I don't want to dive too much in that. Now, no low-budget free agent like a Javonte Green, like a Torrey Craig, or even a Javon Carter. No more of that. Let's find some young, talented guys who has some upside to see if they can provide something for our Chicago Bulls. Let's find specialists with proven track records. Let's find some young players who can come in here and we know this guy's going to stick defense. This guy's going to be able to help stretch the floor. This guy's going to help push pace. This guy's going to help do something. You know what I'm saying? Find some type of specialist. Find a defensive specialist. You probably already got that at Alex Caruso, though he should stick around. So really it needs to come down to who can help improve our shooting profile like we wanted to do coming into this past season. That's what it really comes down to me. Arturas Karnisovas, look around. You're getting left behind. You're getting left behind because you steady want to play this continuity game, this competitive game. It's time to make moves. Look around. This NBA is being ran by the young bucks now. Not the Milwaukee Bucks, the young guys. We're talking about your SGAs. We're talking about your Ant Edwards. We're talking about your Jalen Brunsons of the world. We're talking about, all these young players who are bringing life into their respective organizations. Hell, I can go down to Houston, who didn't even make the playoffs, and see that they have a brighter future right now than the Chicago Bulls, even though they didn't make the playoffs either. Look around, AK. Look around, Mark Eversley. It's time to get busy. And again, I don't believe that they're going to make a lot of moves. That's just my personal opinion. Hey, once somebody show you who they are, believe them until they show you something different. This is what he's shown me the last 2 years. I got to go with that. So make the moves. Look around. See what's out there. Let's improve this team. If you want to keep some guys here, if you want to keep your Alex Caruso's here, I'm okay with that. If you want to keep your DeMar DeRozan here, there has to be some type of plan in place to where you're like, hey, we're going to give you 2 years. After that, you're out of here. Or something like that, or figure it out. Or if DeMar DeRozan has to depart, I'm okay with that too. But you got to figure out, for me, your 2 biggest problems. That's Zach LaVine not wanting to be there, and that's not enough investment in that front court with your size and your athletic ability. I believe those 2 things are what you need to start with. So look around, because these bigs out here, they are pretty damn good and athletic. You're looking at OKC with Chet. You're looking at Minnesota with the Cat and the Rudy Gobert duo. They providing you with something different. You're looking at the New York Knicks. They had Mitchell Robinson. He went down, but nonetheless, you're looking at Isaiah Hartenstein. You're looking at the Cavs, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. Young athletic bigs that provide some things that the Bulls don't provide right now. Let's figure it out. Arturas Karnisovas, look around. The playoffs is kind of giving you a blueprint on what you need to do. That's it. That's it. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Let me know your thoughts below. I'm sticking to it. Let me know what you agree with. Let me know what you disagree with. And we're going to chop it up down below. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Shy Boys Podcast. I'm your host today, Bobby. Hit the like button, subscribe before you go, and I'm going to catch y'all on the next one for sure.
Cognac. Gang.